Hello and welcome to episode 16 of Destroy Before Listening. This is part 1 of a conversation between myself, Pete Byrne, and Graham Thompson. Graham plays bass and vocals currently in the noisy hardcore band Ball Peen. He also drums in the group Ozo with Mike Vest, which is more psychedelic and jam orientated. But he started out playing guitar with the band Gin in the earlier 2000s. He can play guitar, bass and drums equally well and has done in a ton of bands over the past 20 years. We discuss probably a universal theme for kids in the 90s getting into music and the punk and hardcore scene. From the early gigs and exposure to the underground to finding the music and collecting records, how you choose an instrument to play, finding people to be in a band with, playing live and the types of venues, etc. Please rate, review, subscribe and share this, that would be great. Or follow on Instagram at Destroy Before Listening. There will also be various links in the show notes. Thanks. Right then, Graham Thompson, if you want to just do a quick introduction of anything relevant, anything that you think is relevant to, why we're friends or why you're doing this or how anything.
I've been in bands in and around Newcastle since about 98, something like that. So me and you've crossed paths sort of quite a few times over the years. I think I saw Orinda Forest and that was the first time we were ever in the same room together that I'm aware of. And then I've been in, a bunch of bands. I guess the first one that people might remember is a band called Gin that was already going for a few years, and then I joined them in about 2006. But been in loads and loads of bands. I'm currently in a band called Ball Peen, and me and Adam, the drummer, have been in bands since 1998. He was in my very first proper band. We were in a band. Well, we sort of were going to a lot of the same gigs, and I would see you around and whatever. And then we were in a band. Was it about
2010 was
right?
You played drums about like 6 months or probably longer. I don't know. How long did you play drums?
It was I'd say like about a year and a half.
Yeah, maybe
more.
Maybe it was I
couldn't somewhere
remember.
Between like a year and 2 years, roughly.
I couldn't remember. It was definitely like a year at least.
Yeah.
But
so we did that band, and that was End Now.
Well, I'm Pete Byrne, and I was in Orinda Forest from about 98. I was in bands from 97, and then Orinda Forest was 1998 to 2000, and then Mazaran, which was start about 2002, and then did RYN as well, which was 2003 to 2011, and then now doing this, and that's that. Well, I was going to ask you about like instruments, really, or because you play everything. You play guitar, bass, drums, and sing. You did a release, a whole album that you did yourself. That you like. I don't know how the fuck someone did that when I knew. Well, when I knew that you did it, I was just like, how does anyone do that? How does someone do that?
It was something I'd always wanted to do. I'd wanted to do it for years and years and years since I was quite young, and then I started. I mean, I released it last summer. I finally gave myself the kick in the arse last summer to do it, and last summer being the first lockdown that we were in this country and what have you. So I'd had these songs, and I tried mixing them years ago because I recorded it years ago, like about
it's like 2017 or something. I know you did the drums or something, maybe or
something like
15, 2015.
Yeah, 15. I think it was a good while ago, maybe even earlier. I can't remember now. I did it ages ago, and then it was on my old cheap PC with Cubase on, and it was that PC is pretty much dead now, and the music just stayed on that PC. And I tried mixing it years ago and was never happy with it. And then I'd started a few years ago getting more into recording and buying some reasonable gear and what have you, and started upping my chops a little bit in terms of mixing and what have you. And so it was always an albatross around my neck that I had this album's worth of material, and I'd never got around to finishing it, and it killed us. So I kind of just took lockdown last year as the opportunity to work out how to get it off my old PC, because Cubase would crash every time I opened it. But I finally worked out that, and then
did you have to find new leads, new sort of creative ways of like passing one
No, it was a software
It's
thing.
easy.
It was a really simple
Okay.
thing in the end as well. I basically had to
Alright.
turn the PC on, leave it for a while so that it had like warmed up and it stopped trying to do updates and whatever else it was trying to do.
Yeah.
Open Cubase, and I remember there's like a sort of, I can't remember what the setting is exactly, but I know it's the, when you're mixing and recording, I can't remember if it's like the latency or whatever it is, or the whatever, I can't remember, but you want a different setting for recording and mixing, and if you're trying to mix down and with this particular setting, it just doesn't like it. So I went into Cubase, and because I use Logic now on a Mac and know that, I went back into Cubase, and before it crashed, I quickly got into the menu and changed this setting, and it worked. So because any time I would try and bounce anything down, it would just die instantly. So I thought I'd basically lost all that stuff. I even went into the file and found all the individual WAV files, but it was one folder filled with every WAV file of all 12 or 13 songs, all labeled bass drum 1, bass drum 1A,
Handy.
bass drum
That's a tip for anyone, is like always to name your stuff.
yeah.
Just
I managed to get the files and I mixed it, and I thought I was never 100% happy with it, but I just thought, I remember I was in the middle of mixing it and I was nearly done. Or at least, I mean, I don't think if you're doing something like that, you're ever nearly done. But there was like one of those Bandcamp Fridays coming up in about 2 days where it was free, and I just thought, right, that's your deadline.
got to do it.
Finish your mixing and put it up for free and see what happens. So I did that. I released that last year, and I guess to sort of a long way around answering your question is the instrument thing.
Oh, this is C90 anyway, the band.
Yeah,
the group.
C90. I mean, I'm actually in the middle of recording another thing now, but it's like 6 or 7 songs. I don't know if I've got the energy to do a full album.
No.
It takes forever, but it's really good fun. But sort of answering your question, the instrument thing is, I was really lucky that I grew up in a house where there was a lot of music around. So my mum and dad had like a reasonable record and cassette collection, and they were always listening to music. And then I've got a brother who's 10 years older, and he was listening to a lot of music too. So there was always around music. And it was always rock stuff. Like, I suppose from my mum and dad, I was getting Cream, Zeppelin, Sabbath, that kind of stuff. And then from my brother, somewhere between my dad and my brother, I got Nirvana, and then my brother was more like indie, so I got into like Charlatans and Stone Roses and stuff like that, which I still quite like those two bands to this day. But so I just had this interest in music, and I can't remember exactly how it started, but I don't know if I asked for a guitar or I got a guitar when I was about 10, and it was one of those 3/4 size nylon strung guitars.
Oh yeah, that's what I started on as well. I had as well.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things where like you want an electric guitar, but I guess you want to see if you're actually bothered. And for about a year or so, I guess I wasn't really bothered. I didn't pay much attention to it, and then I said I wanted an electric guitar and an amplifier. And my dad sort of said, "Well, you can't have one. Like, you need to basically show that you're going to show some interest. So, like, go away and like learn some chords and what have you. And if you show some interest, then I'll think about it." And he brought home this like photocopy chord sheet, and I went upstairs and came back down about an hour later, and I'd learned 3 or 4 chords, like just like that. So he was like, "Oh, yeah, right, okay, you are interested." So then I got an electric guitar, a Hondo SG copy, which I've still got.
What the fucking hell's a Hondo?
Hondo, yeah, some sort of, where is it? Is it
Never heard of a Hondo.
It's not Japanese. I can't remember where they're made now. But yeah, it's just like cheap but reasonably, reasonable quality, cheap SG knockoff with half decent pickups and half decent machine heads and stuff. I've still got it. It's covered in stickers and a bit battered and stuff. But I'm glad.
So it's an SG copy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
In a little Marshall, and I guess I took to it a lot more, getting the electric, and I was just learning covers, and I never had any interest in writing original stuff for a long time. I was just learning, like, I guess at that age I was learning Nirvana, Green Day, stuff like that, which was pretty good stuff to learn, I suppose. Easy, like fairly easy stuff, and that kind of thing, and just bashing away on chords and what have you. And so I played guitar from probably about 11 or 12, electric guitar, and then kind of continued on with that, and started getting interested in effects pedals and distortion and all this stuff. And then at some point in high school, I don't know. My dad's a drummer. I forgot to mention that. So my dad.
I was going to say, yeah, dad's a drummer.
Yeah,
and this is in Gosforth as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So I grew up in from the age of 8, lived in Gosforth and grew up around there, 7 or 8. So my dad was a drummer in the 70s and what have you, in sort of 70s rock bands and stuff. And so I remember just being in middle school, and there was me and two mates wanted to like play a song, and one was going to play guitar, one was going to play bass, and I don't know, I just presumed I could play drums. I don't know what it was, and like
That's all you need.
well, I'm lucky that it turns out I did have a fairly natural aptitude for it, and I kind of took to it quite quickly. I don't know if I just knew, and I don't want to sound cocky or arrogant. I just kind of took to it, you know what I mean? So I started playing drums on and off, just in like sort of music rooms at school, and what have you, never in bands or out. And then the bass kind of came later, I guess. I was doing covers bands at school, and I would do vocals in those, which wasn't always great. But I guess I just decided I could probably do it and had a go at it. So
Yeah.
and then bass just was a natural extension of playing guitar. Really, I remember the reason I bought a bass is because I started music college in about 2001 or something like that. And to do, home recordings and to do songs for assignments, and just because I was starting to get an interest in writing my own stuff and do my own recordings, I bought a bass so that I could have a bass to record, basically, and took it from there. So that was a stupidly long response to kind of to your question.
Yeah.
And then I've kind of flip-flopped between all of them over the years in different bands, playing one or the other, and it depending on which band I was in and that kind of thing. But I enjoy playing them all to different degrees. I'm kind of lucky in that regard, I suppose.
And then you decided to do a full recording.
Yeah, I guess after I realised I could play the drums a bit when I was young, I had that aspiration. And I'll be honest, it was the first Foo Fighters album, because it would have been like around the time that came out that I got into it. I was like, oh, he played everything on that record.
Yeah.
I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
And that was where the interest came from. But obviously, it didn't happen for another, I don't know, 15 years, 20 years or something, or whatever it was. I don't know. But I always had an interest in doing it, and kind of thought that I could do it. I mean, I did really like basic sort of daft recordings when I was in music college, where I would play everything, like doing the drums. I did a thing that was almost like sort of daft grindcore, where I lived with a lad who had a drum kit set up in his bedroom, and I recorded like 21 really short, like almost like East West Blast Test kind of short drum beat, like for like 20, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Recorded the drums and then wrote music to all of those in a day. I did the entire thing in 24 hours and just like wrote daft riffs and bass lines and no vocals and just stuff like that. And then I guess kind of took it a bit more seriously later on, doing proper songs and what have you. So, but I really enjoy it. It is hard. It's hard work, and it's taxing. But I think the reward is pretty great at the end. I really sort of enjoy the challenge, to be honest with you.
Cool.
So anyway, you.
Right.
Where I've waffled a lot there. Guitar?
Well, no, it was
drums. Actually, was it drums first?
No. Well, it was like the shitty, like you say, the nylon strung Argos guitar.
Yeah.
And then I think I learned to play like some Pixies songs or something like that, because they were like, I was big into Pixies when I was like, I don't know, 11 or something. Like I was quite, I don't know, 11 or 12.
Yeah.
But then I wanted a bass, really. I got a bass for my 13th birthday. And that was because I just like loved like No Means No and like Big Black were my favorite things. I wanted to, like, I loved the bass sound of both, and like I wanted to emulate that, really.
Yeah.
And then about a year later, I thought like, oh, I'll just try guitar, because I don't know, it couldn't be much different than a bass, I thought. And then you'd learn a power chord, and it's like the local groups, like Leatherface and China Drum. It was the Gordon Smith guitar, so it was my 14th or 15th birthday or something like that, and I got electric guitar and then just did that, and then that I kind of stopped that. I played that through I don't know, just bands, just dicking around, just like when you're learning, you're thinking, oh, I'll do a band, and then but no one's good enough. No one's really a good enough guitarist or bass player or drummer or anything when you're like 15.
Yeah. Did you ever play bass in a band?
Yeah. Tyrine with Rob was playing drums. This was
Oh,
about
yeah, Lobster.
Yeah, he was playing guitar, and this is in about 2000. And I don't think, I can't remember if we played many gigs.
You definitely played one at the Dog and Parrot where you were all wearing Hawaiian shirts because I was at that.
Well, that'd be Lobster's influence. He would have told us. Me, me and Rob. I remember me and Rob were basically like his kind of people who he was leading the band kind of thing, and he would have said, right, everyone's wearing Hawaiian shirts, and he was basically like, you're only listening to Corrupted and Celtic Frost and Sleep, and like that's it. That's the influences. We had this 15-minute long song, and I was doing vocals and playing bass. Lobster was playing guitar. He did some vocals, and Rob was playing drums.
You did vocals in that band?
Yeah,
I don't remember that.
a bit.
See, that's before I'd ever spoken to you. So that's probably like that after seeing Or in the Forest in '97. That's probably the second time I ever saw you in a band, I'd imagine. And I remember that gig. I don't remember who else you played with. I remember that gig.
Well, there was oh shit. It was Voorhees and I don't know. We might have played another one. I cannot remember. It didn't happen because I think Johnny was going to fucking like Japan or something. Oh, he's living in Japan for like a few months.
Yeah.
With his girlfriend who then became his wife.
Mm.
Before she'd come over. So I think that's why it must have just stopped or not happened anymore. And
right.
I can't really remember much about it other than we practiced. We did it. It was about 6 months we were doing it. I remember that much because we had to learn this really long song because he was obsessed with like long songs. Everything had to be like over 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And they were complicated as well. They were quite complicated, you know.
Wasn't it called like Marijuana Tarantula or something
Yeah, there was Super Marijuana Spider. That was the thing. That was just because there was it was these lyrics written because I was it was like when I was young, I was like I did a bong hit and there was a spider on my lampshade in my room and I just blew like the smoke onto it and then just sort of imagined, you know, fucking sleep or someone, you know, write lyrics about it. About the spider going into the cosmos or something, and then, you know, on a trip. I don't know. It's just fucking stupid. Yeah. But that was
spinning a slow web or some such.
And that's how the guitar thing came around again. I think it was doing the heavy stuff, and it was just like, oh, we've been doing this fast stuff. Oh, and now we'll just do really slow things.
Right. It's just interesting that you went from. I don't think I've ever heard of anyone starting on guitar, like getting a guitar and then choosing to move to bass. Not that that's like a wrong move. It's just interesting that you chose to do that.
Oh, it was guitar. Then I was like, guitar's all right, and then but just bass sounded better because of the bands that I liked. Yeah. I was like, this bass sounds really, you know, like Rob Wright. It was just, I don't know, it was just more. It was more powerful. It just sounded more like the thing that I wanted to do is like, because it was just the rhythmic side of things, and obviously that came into how easy it was to sort of just say, oh, I will play drums, or I'll play drums, or because I think everything in the circle we're in, everyone could kind of have a go at anything really, and it was just like whoever was around at the time and whatever they could play.
Yeah.
And can we do some music? Could we do a band? Or, you know, so that's how it was a few different things.
So the Gordon Smiths, because you had more than one Gordon Smith, didn't you? At some point.
2.
Yeah.
Well, 2, it was always, I never had more than like 2, but it was the initial one. And then I got one when we did Marzaran, and there was one in between, but I sold that and then got the kind of double cutaway. It's a shape you don't really see. It's more of a like I don't know, it's the GS2.
Right. So early bands, Gordon Smiths. So where was this that you were? Where was it? I mean, I said I sort of grew up in Gosforth, and that's where I went to school, and that's where I did my first few bands and stuff. You were in Wickham, is that right?
Wickham, right, till I was in my like early 20s, and Wickham, it was just like a village on a hill. It was about like 10 minutes away from the metro centre, and then it wasn't. it was only like 15 minutes, 20 minutes on to town on a bus.
To
And
Newcastle City Centre.
yep, it was
Yeah.
only like 20 pence or something, it was like 13, 40. It was like cheap. It didn't cost much to go to town. Oh, it was probably a bit more. I don't know. Who knows?
No, I
Uh,
think you're right. I think I remember it being 15 and then rising up to 20.
if you're a kid, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Uh,
Yeah, you could go anywhere you wanted. It was
yeah, so like my parents were just like, they weren't really bothered, I don't think they just, I was kind of going to Newcastle and, well, Metro Centre first and then Newcastle from pretty young. So, well, when I grew up, the influences mainly was like, it was from skateboarding, and I was like riding BMX and then skateboarding, and then it was like the skateboard videos, and then you kind of pool your resources to what music there was. So that's how I ended up hearing, like death metal and like indie and like punk stuff and hardcore and just
and
all the stuff that's still with us. It was just
uh,
there was things in rotation, like people had tapes and just pass them around, or the older brother or someone like that, or you
well,
know.
we need to give, I think, a very brief shout out to a man who I was in several bands with, and that's Mr. Peter Falkus, is it not?
Oh yeah, yeah,
He was part of
100%.
that formula, was he not?
And uh, Ian Sidaway as well, who P. Falkus was in a band with as well, because it
Yeah.
was, well, there's a whole group of people thinking back to from who went to that school, Wickham. Well, it was like Wickham. It had just turned from like being or it rebranded from being a comprehensive school to just a school. They dropped the comp bit because it was like, look, it was like getting a bad rep or something.
What was the
Comprehensive
stigma
schools.
about the comprehensive label?
I don't know. It was just basically seen as like a school that would accept anyone from any area, and it
Right.
was just like you'd mix with kids from. I did go to school with a lot of just fucking scum,
Wrongins.
like scummers, basically, like chavas. It
Yeah.
was like peak chava when I went into school. That school when I was 11, 1991. It was just full of just people who wanted to fight, people who just take things, other people's things, and then cigarettes, coats,
Right.
whatever it was. There was just like you either had to kind of disappear, or you couldn't really stand out. You just have to kind of be one of these people who's fighting and
Meld into the
being
background a
being
little
being
bit.
bad, or you just disappear. Yeah, so
Yeah.
you kind of find that there's this like a sub culture or like underground of kids who are just not into doing that, but didn't want to get like beaten up or whatever for being, a metaler or something, or like I
Yeah.
was just silly. But yeah, so there was, well, that school, my age, like Ian Sidaway was like my best friend, and Folkus was about 2 years ahead, and Lee Stoko, who was doing Culver, I think he started doing that pretty young, and then we would do Mars Run together. But I didn't know him at school; it was only afterwards. And the same with Mike Vest as well, because he was in my brother's year, but I didn't know him when I was at school.
So, in amongst those names there, you've got a lot of local bands over the last 15 to 20 years, haven't you, really? Like lots and lots of bands.
There's a lot of people came from that area at that time who were born around kind of late 70s, early 80s, who did stuff. And even if a few years, because I mean, like P. Falkus's brother uh, did McCluskey and Future of the Left,
Yeah.
and probably about similar age would be, like Fracture magazine.
Yeah.
The guy Russell, who
Oh, yeah.
he Charred Remains as well. He did a
Russell
zine.
Remains. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's from Wickham as well. So there's like, I don't know, there was something about the place, really. I guess I don't know what it was. Just a bunch of kids who went to that school at a certain time. Who,
It's quite a lot of people for one school to go on and do a
yeah, it's
reasonably
kind of
varied
funny
amount
that
of like different bands and but with sort of varying levels of success and what have you as well. And they were all well known, at least in the local area.
to each other, everyone knew what everyone was doing. I mean, it was only like after the fact, after leaving that school and kind of moving out of the area and stuff, that it's like, oh fuck yeah, he went to school with you.
Yeah.
It's just strange, yeah. But that there was also like Gateshead Library, like you're kind of borrowing. You pay whatever, like, to rent a CD. Or they even had, initially, they had vinyl records there as well you could
Oh,
take
yeah,
out.
okay.
Yeah, which is how old it is. And then they just kind of ushered in the CDs, and then everything was CD. So,
Because it was the same at the library near me. I don't remember there being vinyl, although I'm not going to say definitely that there wasn't, but that
there
was,
would have been probably, yeah.
yeah, probably. That was how I, pre-internet, because this is pre-internet. That's how I got
Very much, yeah.
a good amount of music. It was either through friends or through Beavis and Butthead, or just seeing stuff in the library and just taking a punt on it, paying £1 and taking it home for a week and taping it.
Yeah.
It was great.
Totally. I mean, that was, it was like Sonic Youth, Daydream Nation, I heard pretty early on. And that would just completely opened up the doors to guitars and guitar music. And the post-punk stuff as well, which was like Public Image and Kill and Joke was like the first Public Image album, and Nighttime by Kill and Joke. Just fucking loved that stuff, still do.
Yeah.
Also, like Dead Kennedys is another band that was just massive.
Was that a library one?
No, it was just one of those, like, you're in it, you see the logo, it was like the Black Flag bars.
Yeah.
I like Black Flag, but Dead Kennedys was just the thing, you know.
Well, for me, Fresh Fruit for Rotten Vegetables
Totally.
was one of the library purchases for me. That was
amazing.
like that was probably the best of well, actually, no, there was Times of Grace by Neurosis as well.
Yeah.
And the only other two I can remember was the Kiss This, the Sex Pistols compilation. I think that's what it was called. And AC/DC Live at Donington. But
Okay.
like, I'd forgotten about whatever the fuck we just said.
No, not Dead Kennedys. No,
Dead Kennedys, that was it. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that being from
someone had a tape. It was the In Golby Trust, and when I heard that, I was just like, Jesus fucking Christ, this is just like next level speed and just lyrics and everything. It was just so fast and like total hardcore, you know, compared to Fresh Fruit.
Yeah.
And
they said they openly said that they were going for the DC sound, didn't they?
Oh, it's total, yeah. You can tell they had Bad Brains or whatever, and just thought Minor Threat or whatever, and was just like fast. Yeah, they just proved how fast they could be, really. By I don't know if that's rated, underrated or not. I think that end of things, Alternative Tentacles, and I mean, we're going on from the switching tapes around and like taping things from the radio as well, because like John Peel was massive. There was a few radio shows around at the time. There was I'm trying to think, there was like Mark Radcliffe had a show on like Radio 5 and he used to get like live bands playing live in session.
Right.
And I'm sure he had Leatherface on there. And just stuff like that. And you'd hear, or John Peel was always like, I remember hearing he did like a Japanese hardcore. He just played about 10 minutes of like Japanese hardcore. Just like loads of bands. And it was just like, you know, just different completely. And then it was like hunt out anything that was John Peel and the sessions for all the classic sort of Napalm Death, Carcass, you know, all that gear.
Yeah.
And that was an influence the big time as well. That hearing that was the UK side of things. It's like, oh fuck, people in this country do it as well, and that was cool. And then kind of buying records, it was just buying things and like trading them in. It was because things were really cheap as well. They'd be in the bargain bins, in the sort of chain outlets, or anyway, just like look in the independent shops or the second-hand shops, or there was like Newcastle. I mean, around the early 90s, 92, 93, was probably about like 10, 15 record shops. There was just so many.
I was going to say, let's dig into the record thing a little bit because, well, I know that you've kind of parted ways with a bunch of stuff in recent years, but you've always had a really healthy record collection in the time I've known you, you know, enviable to some degree.
Okay.
And you've thinned it out a little bit, but you've still got a really great collection. And I've got an okay collection. And I think we've both, although I didn't always buy vinyl. I bought CDs for a lot of years. I think we've always been quite interested in like record shopping, and I don't know about you, but the record fairs that you used to.
Yeah, that was more for like the bootleg tape, like the live recordings of stuff.
Yeah,
There was always like some guy with a suitcase with loads of knockoff kind of like shady tapes that like I remember I had one. It was a big black bootleg and it just the tape squeaked
I know
just
exactly who you're
terribly,
talking about, and
terribly.
it was two guys. The guy you're probably talking about, he was quite rotund with like long dark hair,
Oh, probably I don't know.
and like they always had like just photocopied VHS and photocopied cassettes with the
Yeah.
same typeface on all of them. In fact, I've just sold a bunch of records for my brother, um, vinyl and cassettes. And one of the cassettes a couple of the cassettes I sold from were Simple Minds bootlegs that he bought at
Oh
record fairs
God.
when he was young, from like I don't know when, like sometime in the 80s. I swear it's the same guy because it's the same photocopied sleeves, the same terrible typeface on the
Oh,
inside.
they just look shit. It just looked like I don't know how the guy or where the guy got the artwork from, but it was awful.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I did go to those fairs, but it was just a bit kind of like you had to pay a quid or whatever, quid 50 or something to get in. It was just like, nah, fuck that. I'll go and buy I'll save that money. I'll roll it over because it used to be. Oh, I don't know. You just use your pocket money, which was like
yeah.
a couple of quid or something, and
I had a
you'd buy it.
paper round from when I was about 12, so that was like, I think that was about £5 or £7 a week.
Yeah,
So if there was a record fair coming up, I'd have like, 7, 10 quid or whatever it was, and I'd go
yeah,
and I didn't mind paying in, like I was fine with that. But I was a bit of a nerd about it. I would always go down early and queue for like 15 minutes before the doors, and I even then I had that same thing that I've still got a bit of now, is that kind of, I don't want to miss out. I want to make sure I'm in there early and make sure that nobody buys the cool shit that I'm looking for, whatever that might have been at the time. Even though I was going in with like £10, I wasn't never going to buy much, but
yeah,
a lot of it was because, as much as I love Discogs and I'm on Discogs every day and what
yeah.
have you, like it's definitely taken the romance out of going
Oh,
to a
come.
record fair and just coming across something like a 7 inch or a single or a promo or something, or whatever, that by a band that you knew, that you liked, that you didn't even know existed. Like that's gone now completely.
Yeah, we used to be. That was like going out of the area. It's like you'd have to go to wherever I went, it'd be in different record shops, different towns, wherever it'd just be like, "Where's a record shop? Where's a record shop?"
Mm.
It kind of got a bit obsessive, and then I don't know when sort of eBay was taken off, early 2000s, and US currency was worth like half, was worth nothing really
Yeah,
compared to what it is now, and there was no postage rates were that was not something you would consider and import. Everything was different, so it was like a golden.
it was cheaper to buy from the US than it was from the UK, depending on what you were buying. It was absolutely
Yeah,
ridiculous at the time. It was incredible, like late
yeah,
'90s, early 2000s,
yeah.
even probably into like the mid 2000s. It was
Well, I
absolutely
think
unreal.
yeah, I think it was like a golden era, and there was a load of people dumping their collections who were getting to a certain point that people do, and they'll just got to like offload
Hmm.
the records and they want money or whatever. So when it was more fun seeing the stuff that people were selling. You kind of like see what else someone was selling.
Yeah,
So you get a couple of LPs and whatever it was, and
totally.
just total scores. I mean, like it's unthinkable now anyway.
Yeah,
What with Discogs, the fact that you go on a phone within like a minute, you could buy anything you want if you've got the money.
yeah.
You could probably buy, that was just no fun. And then when that happened, more so, it was like I just became less and less interested in
Yeah,
all of any of it.
yeah, the fun and the romance has definitely disappeared a little bit. I mean, charity shop shopping's kind of pointless these days as
That's
well. Because I've
more,
had some like, I mean, how many years have you'll have done the same thing where you troll through records in charity shops. For all the years you spend trolling through them, I've had 2 or 3 really big scores where it made everything worthwhile. I had some really,
yeah,
really like incredible scores that just made my day. So I used to really enjoy that, but everybody's wise to it now. Either there's just nothing in the charity shops because people are selling it privately,
yeah,
or the shops like Oxfam and stuff. They like Discogs. The thing about Discogs is it's created a price parity across the world. Like
yeah,
there is
yeah,
there's no bargains to be had anymore. And Well, I was going to say parity. There's still people who try and sell stuff for way more than it's worth, but it's the bargain side of things that the bargains are becoming few and far between.
Yeah, fucking, especially now, it's kind of like it's pretty much exclusively anything that's happening in the UK, and even then, it's expensive to get. You with postage and all that charges, it's just too much. Everything's just prohibitive
Yeah,
to
yes,
record collecting. It
totally.
doesn't really work the same.
So it was more. So for you, it was more about the record shops and less about the record fairs. And did that
As the
mean?
record shops, yeah.
Yeah, did that mean coming into Newcastle all the time, or
Oh yeah, all the time.
yeah,
Like once a week, always. Saturday, get into town at like 10:30 or 10 o'clock or something, and don't leave till about 4,
yeah,
and just go around the record shops, and then go around the record shops again,
yeah,
and look at the thing. You're making evaluations in your head of what you might buy or what you think you might be able to buy. It was anything related to touch and go, or like Discord, SST, or alternative tentacles was always those were the things.
right.
And one shop, RPM, always used to get the promos in, and they would always just sell the promo cassettes for like £2.
That's
So I
awesome.
got all the like Southern promo tapes would come through, so you get them probably before the album was released.
And so we're talking about full albums here. We're not talking about
Yeah.
like 2 or 3 tracks or
No, you get the full
excerpts
album.
of
Sometimes you get the
tracks.
full sleeve.
Yeah,
You get a full colour sleeve.
that's awesome.
Like you just get the tape, but with just promo written on it, and then other times would be just a white thing. I mean that this we used to steal them back in. When we used to go down to the Metro Centre, we just steal them. Our price used to they had like a tape bin at the front of the shop, but they would sell the tape that you could like just steal like without any cover or anything.
Yeah.
You just nick that, and then you just like go in that shop or another shop and steal the cassette cover. So you'd have like the full thing, but
you'd resourced it from 2 different places.
Yeah, you could do that, or you could just whatever supermarket was there. They had like, I remember like stealing a Megadeth tape from there. Shit like that.
I mean, you don't want to pay for a Megadeth tape, so it makes sense that you would steal.
You don't have to pay for it. No, just kind of like tie it in with what you look at what you could steal and that. And
did anyone ever get nicked for doing that? Did anyone ever get out of your friend group? Did anyone ever get?
Oh yes, it got nicked for stealing CDs from like HMV or something. The thing is, he stole like about fucking 10 CDs at a time though.
That rings a
bell.
bell.
He did it for a couple of weeks, and they just like went in. I remember going in on a Saturday, and he done it, and it was just like that. The hand, I don't know. It was just like immediately, it was just like a bad vibe. You shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
And he did it, and he just got caught, and straight away there was a guy like bang, hand on the shoulder,
busting him.
Busted, yeah. But like he'd stolen loads.
Yeah. So if we move on from like the record collecting sort of stuff and go back to the bands that we were talking about before, sort of early bands that you were in beyond like the high school bands and what have you, like them. How did you get into? Well, how did you get into hardcore? I guess and punk, whatever you want to call it, metal, But
Well, it was a kind of broad base of things that I was listening to. The first half of the 90s, I remember getting, not really pop punk, just I suppose like the British, more independent labels I was aware of. There was like Rugger Bugger, who put out like, that this compilation. There was the best punk rock in England, son, which was just like a load of really good. It was like 20 odd bands, and it had all the kind of like Sean Forbes did like the write ups of the bands and stuff, and then he put an address. So I remember writing to a few bands, and just thinking, oh fuck, you can write to bands and labels and get records that way.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, because I had ordered some stuff before from Alternative Tentacles and Southern.
Because they both had offices in London, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, yeah. And obviously that like cuts out import. Because when you used to see in record shops all the time, it'd have like an import sticker on.
Yeah.
And this stuff was just, it was imported, but it was just, the distribution was better. So it was easier to get a hold of really if you knew how. Getting into the kind of like into the contemporary hardcore because I'd thought it was, I don't know, I kind of thought it was dead, really. You know, I thought it had died in the 80s or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it was skating in Wickham or something at the time. It's like mid-90s. And I saw Pete Fulkerson. I hadn't seen him in a few years, and he had a totally different kind of look. He had I'm sure he had bleach blonde hair and backpack, baggy jeans, chain wallet, and all that sort of thing. And it was all right. He was like, "All right, dude, you need to get into it, man, hardcore and that. It's great." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." And then he just gave us a copy of Heart Attack magazine or Heart Attack Zine, which was all the kind of bands of that time, like 95,
Right.
96. And that was just more like a revelation, just seeing all this stuff. It was like, fuck, hardcore still exists, you know, and there's this newer kind of thing exists, and there's people who are, I don't know, it's more like the kids, you know,
Yeah.
doing things. And I was a kid, and I was just like, I was on board. And then I'm trying to think with the, I think it was just writing to any UK address that was in Heart Attack. And On With Anger was one, and they did the mail out, which was like, I think it was like quarterly. They did a mail out of everyone's like distro lists,
Right.
stuff that people were selling, whatever it was. There was, you know, everyone was in there, and they just like copied a flyer. The flyers put all the records they had for sale, and then put it in this thing that got sent out every like 4 times a year. And just kind of ordering stuff and realizing that like things were loads cheaper even with the postage. You know, it was like £5 for an album or like £6 for a CD or something, and these things.
And around about that time, and correct us if I'm wrong, but mid-90s On With Anger had been around a few years by then, hadn't it? So it would have had a pretty reasonable roster of bands on it.
Yeah, well,
there was already.
There was a compilation. There was a consolidation compilation that had like
Yeah,
all
the 7-inch.
Yeah, it had
I've
all
got
the
that.
kind of.
Yeah, I know exactly.
It had all the bands of that 1 in 12, the Bradford kind of, all the bands that were playing there.
And they had their own, like, they had a compilation as well, didn't they? I can't remember what it's called now, 12-inch.
Oh, the 1 in 12, yeah, On With Anger put out the Means to an End.
That's it, yeah, Means to an End, yeah. I've got that as well, that's a good one.
That's just like perfect of all the bands that were happening at that time, 96. Probably you would have been, or 96, 97, I think.
Because around that time in the UK, you've got a lot of hardcore bands, but you're starting to get like bands like Bob Tilton and Baby Harp Seal and stuff like that, aren't you? It's a little bit sort of different to the standard.
Well, that was things I got around. I mean, Bob Tilton was probably the first. It was Bugger Bugger. Sean who got the Bob Tilton, the second 7-inch from. Mm-hmm. I remember waiting for it to come out. I remember like this was a time when you'd like tape your coins to a bit of cardboard and put it in a letter. You know, it was like
so
you send a check.
Yeah.
Or you send a check for like £2 or something, you know, like these ridiculous amounts of money that are just now. But back then it was like, oh yeah, checks and money orders and coins or whatever, if they're hidden and all that. So it was that, and the Baby Harp Seal record, I think, was when that came out. Because I think I was seeing them live, because I remember like Ian Subjugation came in with all these like boxes of records to some gig, and it was like the Baby Harp Seal album, and that had just come out, I think.
Yeah, Subjugation's a big one around that time in terms of
that was a label
consistent releases.
Well, that was a label I became aware of because of the Bob Tilton 7-inch, and then seeing that they were doing that end of things, like the emo.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
It was pretty much, wasn't it?
Well, it was, but it wasn't like indie rock emo. It was
the aggressive side of it.
Hardcore.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Well, still sort of hardcore. I think other people were like.
I mean, those early Bob Tilton 7-inches certainly are. I mean, it changed with the LPs, but the 7-inches definitely. The 7-inches are great. Yeah,
I mean, it's all kind of fits into emo. I mean, it's all looking back at it now, but at the time, I mean, it was like a new thing. Because even Heart Attack wasn't even really using. You'd say emo, but it would mean something totally different to whatever it means now. It meant more of a DC thing, Washington DC.
Yeah.
You know, like Rites of Spring.
Yeah, the original sort of use of the term.
Yeah, it was like Revolution summer bands.
So we've talked about kind of how you got into that music, through friends and stuff like that. But then you're talking about these UK labels and talking about these bands and stuff. So what are those early gigs, and who were you going with, and how did or how did you find out about them and that kind of thing?
Uh,
Flyers, was it, or was it like there wouldn't have been? I suppose there would have been national tours advertised in the zine, so they might have had Newcastle dates on, but I
kind of.
doubt
Well,
it.
it was How We Rock zine, which was like the same thing as the On with Anger mail outs. That was the kind of magazine that had all the kind of news of what labels and bands were doing. I'm trying to think where the stuff, the flyers came from or how they happened. The first gig was like early, it was like maybe mid '96, something like that. It was like that was Hard to Swallow, and
Amazing.
that was at the Cumberland Arms, and that was when that area, it was just like, it was really sketchy because we were well, it was me and like Sid who were kind of into it, and I don't know, checking out what was happening live, or what a live band was like. And then we went to the Cumberland Arms, and it was just, it was just totally different. We were young, and everyone else seemed like really old. I
Yeah.
remember like Linz was outside playing football or like kicking a ball around. And then he's like, oh, yeah, I don't know. It was like the hardcore gig. Oh, these are the bands that's playing. And this band's dropped out or something. So there's this band's on. And it was just, well, it was a total eye opener because that area as well where the Cumberland Arms was like, it's the Oosburn. It wasn't the Oosburn then. It was just like some shit end of like the Biker Wall where there was just a kind of dead end street.
Yeah, it was pretty sketchy around the time. Like, it wasn't,
Yeah, well,
and
you
even the
just get,
pub was a bit rough, really. I mean, it's
it
totally
was.
different now. The whole area is completely different now. But
It was just like really didn't look like it had been cleaned and all. It just looked grimy. We were just blown away that the toilet was just like a kind of bit of cement that you pissed into. Basically, it was just like there wasn't a toilet really. It was just like.
I don't even think I dared go to the toilet when I was there.
Well, you wouldn't, yeah. So there's this whole new world of stuff, and then this racket and people like, this hardcore music, and then that was wild. And then you go to that and then pick up some flyers, and then people like, oh, you come to this next gig, and then the next one was like Drop Dead, I think.
Yeah.
And that was the Broken Door, which is another like sketchy sort of bar.
I never went there, unfortunately.
Area. Well, it only like it wasn't around for. I mean, when I was around, it was like kind of closed. I guess I think they started the St James Boulevard thing. It is now.
Oh, like a renovation sort of thing.
Yeah, they like totally just demolished the kind of road system. Well, they were rebuilding the Newcastle's road system, I guess, in that end of the city, and that was one of the places that went 98, probably 1998.
Will that not coincide with when Newcastle United extended the ground as well? So that
I'd imagine so. Yeah,
so that probably makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah.
The whole thing would have tied in,
because it was just down the road from. It was literally just down the road from Newcastle United. It's like St James's Park. So
yeah,
I think that was about around about the same time.
Yeah, because I was trying to figure that out because I was thinking, why wasn't there more stuff on there longer? But it's like Newcastle's always been. There's always been a venue, and then it'll happen for about 2-3 years, then just not happen.
Yeah,
and then it might happen again in some years.
Mm-hmm.
Like 5 years later, it might happen for a year. Or there's always like venue switching, probably like a lot of places. There was nowhere like a stable sort of.
No, there wasn't, was there?
Space where people could put gigs on, because they'd always like, people got funny about it, I think, or some people just couldn't be arsed with, when they started like regenerating the pubs, they didn't want like certain bands on.
Yeah, that happened in a few places, didn't it?
Yeah. So the Broken Door was a really small space. It was kind of almost like if I think of it now, it wasn't that much bigger than my living room, really.
Oh, right, okay.
It's not very big at all, the space. It was just kind of a little drum riser, like really small room. So it was really, you were kind of up close to the bands, and it was like seeing Los Crudos at like, a foot away or something, 2 feet away. It was just like, fuck, incredible.
Yeah.
It was just unbelievable. Couldn't believe it, the first time seeing them. It was just like, well, I have to do a band now. I didn't know how to know anything about it really, or how to play that kind of thing, or or anything really.
Well, you didn't do that kind of stuff immediately, did you? With those first few bands that you did, it was a little bit more like, I mean, dare say melodic punk sort of stuff,
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
it?
there was some melodic hardcore thing. We just
Yeah,
kind of like play like the people whoever it was would just like a Diagnostic
that's kind of what I
cover
was
or
thinking. Yeah, yeah,
something. Yeah, we'd like play a Diagnostic cover or like a like a local band cover of a local band stuff or something. Just fuck around.
yeah.
That was at the old Sound Room, which was Route 26. It was called. It was in a community centre like in Deckham, Sheriff Hill.
Right.
Uh, and all the college campus had kind of shifted, but there was this one building left that was the community centre. They had this studio space in it,
Yeah.
and that was the old Sound Room. So we'd like practice there, and you kind of get away with whatever really. They weren't bothered.
So that's a little way outside of Newcastle city centre, isn't it? But not.
It wasn't far for us.
Yeah.
It wasn't that far for us. It was just like up the kind of other side of the valley or whatever it would have been. Really.
Yeah.
It's not a valley as in a fucking meadow, and that is a housing estate. Horrible housing estates with like it was not a kind of area you'd really want to be in or be around, but like.
But that was that. I mean, talking about the Cumberland Arms and the Usburn around the time, that was, and it still is to a degree. Like if you're talking about a band rehearsal space, or if you're talking about a venue or something like that, they typically are in the shithole areas, aren't they?
It wasn't near anywhere on the way to anything. It was just in like the shitty end of wherever it was that no one wanted to go to. That's where there would be some lone pub or like practice area, it's like practice space or whatever. So
it's like breweries, craft beer breweries now have taken the place of rehearsal rooms and studios, haven't they? Like taking those spaces on industrial parks where previously you would have had like rehearsal rooms and all that kind of thing. It's the same sort of thing now. Like.
Yeah, but you just can't make. You probably just couldn't make any money. The idea of gentrifying that area of the city just didn't seem like it was happening.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was Cumberland Arms is right next to Biker Wall.
Yeah.
So it was like just a deprived area. It was just sketchy, but it's not that now. Well, to the early bands, it was the first sort of semi-serious one. It was like. It kind of didn't really have a name, but it was on a flyer. Oh, it was Chinese Burn.
Yeah.
And then it was like Rob called it Arthur Fonzarelli. I don't know why. I
absolutely love that.
He probably saw Charles Bronson being a band and thought that was There's some people were naming the bands like things like that.
Yeah.
And the gig we played, I don't know. It was really good as well because that was 97 and it was seeing Palatka and Inhumanity were the bands that we were supporting.
Was that? And did you only do the one gig?
Maybe we did 2 or 3. I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And it was like, fuck, someone's putting us on with these Americans, and we're like supporting an American band, and we'll do a Void cover, and like the Americans were into it, and we're just like, yeah, we'll just go full bore, and I don't know, go for it. And that it was the Gravity record stuff as well at the time was really, it's like the Angel Hair 7-inch and the Born Against You Away and the Mohinder 7-inch. I think everyone had those who was into doing something like that, and then these bands, and we're just like, yeah, we'll just go for it.
Yeah.
So we did that.
And when you're talking about like a physicality as well, aren't you?
It was just intense. People screaming and that.
Yeah.
And bashing things as fast as possible. Yeah. And playing as fast as possible. And the kind of chaos of it was like it's what appeals to you when you're like 16 or 17 or something.